Wealth and Mobility Insights, the podcast where global strategy meets generational foresight. I'm your host, Sarah, and today we're stepping into the world where investing isn't just about returns, it's about passion, taste, and legacy. And joining me today is someone who has been a champion in this shift long before it made it to the headlines. Alban Jerome, Senior Partner, Strategic Growth and Wealth Advisory at Gallant Toole. Alban, welcome back.
Thank you, Sarah. Such a warm welcome. This is one of my favorite conversation. It's where wealth management meets storytelling or narrative building, right? Where a Monet or a McLaren doesn't just sit in a portfolio. It anchors a legacy. Passion assets sit at the intersection of wealth and identity. So when we speak with clients, it's not just about portfolio growth anymore, it's about what the portfolio means to them.
Alban, I remember you once told a client, if you're going to spend 3 million on a Ferrari, let's make sure it's also working for your grandchildren. This is something that we've been hearing more and more. Show me your art collection and I'll know more about your values than your holdings.
Exactly. So we are now structuring plans where 10 to 15% of total net worth is allocated towards what I call as tangible storytelling. These assets perform. More than that, they are a signal. They communicate legacy, intellect, taste, and purpose.
And this isn't just decorative wealth, right? This is resilient. Many of these assets classes outperform public markets during downturns.
Yes, and the data is very compelling. During the 2008 financial crisis, the S&P 500 dropped over 37%, but the Mimosas Art Index, tracking blue chip art, only fell about 4% and recovered within 18 months. In 2020, when everything was volatile, classic cars and rare watches remained very stable and appreciated. Why? Because they are non-correlated and they're globally valued.
And let's not forget, unlike tech stocks, Patek doesn't tweet.
Very true. And a Ferrari does not file quarterly reports either.
So let's dig into the categories. Not all collectibles are created equal. So which ones are showing the strongest performance?
So here's what we see consistently among top performing passion assets. Fine art, blue chip art grew about 18% in 2003 alone. They were led by artists like Kusama, Picasso, or Basquiat. Rare watches like Rolex or Patek or Rima, they went up by 10 to 15% over a decade. Then your vintage cars, the Haggai index shows over 330% total returns in last 25 years. Fine wines like Bordeaux and Burgundy, they have appreciated something like 160% in the last decade. Whisky, which is like a personal favorite of mine, the ultra rare casks are now selling at over $1 million at auction. Designer handbags, Hermes Birkin bags, saw a 13% uh, CAGR growth. They are outperforming gold in some areas. NFTs and digital collectibles, which are a lot more volatile, I agree, but they are also something a lot of younger collectors are having interest, especially among young tech millionaires, right?
We've had clients call their handbags their soft gold, and it makes sense. Hermes releases are limited, handmade, and highly curated. It's scarcity, status, and utility in one.
That is so true. Matter of fact, we had this client recently who flipped a five-piece handbag portfolio acquired privately in Paris for 2.1 million. It resold in Asia through a private dealer network for about a 40% gain within 18 months.
And that's the other point, right? Liquidity is evolving. These aren't always going to be the long holds anymore. It's structured, right? There is a growing market.
True. These assets are very non-correlated, so they behave differently than equities, appreciating and outperforming traditional markets over time. And they're very story rich, right? They give a lot of emotional legacy texture to your portfolio. One client, and I'm going to quote him here, refers to his watch collection as his family's silent time capsule. It's valued over 9 million and held in an offshore structure designed to pass this to his grandchildren tax free.
Alban, we've talked performance, we've talked categories, but let's talk about culture. Who is really driving this shift into passion assets?
It's a fascinating generational and geographic pivot. We are seeing millennial and Gen Z millionaires who prioritize identity and visibility. Middle Eastern families are today now allocating more into contemporary art. They're putting money into supercars. They're putting into art, heritage watches. Asian buyers are, especially the ones from China and Hong Kong, are still doing a lot of investments in Bordeaux and Burgundy. US investors, especially the younger generation, lean into pop culture memorabilia, sports collectibles, and supporting emerging artists. So, one of our clients recently acquired through a private network a Kobe Bryant game worn jersey, not just for the cultural assets or the monetary aspects, but also as an emotional legacy piece for the children who I believe are great basketball fanatics, right? Now, it is stored in a Geneva Freeport under the family trust.
So, identity is becoming a dimension of wealth.
Exactly. See, it is what we call as reputational capital, not just what you earn, but also what you are known for. And we're seeing a genuine shift from status symbols to story driven ownership. Clients want to own rare things, absolutely true. But more than that, they also want to own meaning.
Alban, let's talk about infrastructure, the back end strategy. What separates a collector from a structured investor?
A collector owns, an investor governs. So here's what our clients are doing. Fine art is often held in a Liechtenstein foundation, which preserves control, allows for philanthropic structuring, and avoid probate. High value watches are stored in free ports, offshore, sometimes duty free storage with controlled climate and 24-hour security. Vintage cars are, of course, often registered in the Isle of Man, holding companies for inheritance simplicity and liability protection. While collections, of course, are always placed in bonded warehouses under custodial agreements, often ensured to make sure that their market value is preserved.
And you've talked before about the trap of unstructured passion assets. What happens when that goes wrong?
Well, we had a client, a very nice Italian Brazilian individual, dual national. He passed away very recently. He had about 6 million in art, all had very personally, not something we managed, of course. It took about 18 months to settle the estate. The family ended up losing over $1 million in taxes, storage, and delays and whatnot, right? Now, we have advised the heirs to restructure the collection under a Singapore foundation when we wrap the entire portfolio under three generational governance plan so that it's protected and preserved.
The message is very clear, Alban. If you love it, you'll structure it. Okay, let's talk about access. The assets aren't exactly sitting on public exchanges. So how many people do actually buy into these type of markets?
It's a very private ecosystem. Think Sotheby's or Christie's and Phillips for blue art private dealers and gallerists who specialize in secondary markets, right? These are all invitation only auctions that happen in places like London, Dubai, Geneva, and increasingly you have a lot of curated platforms that can and networks that help you invest in these spaces, but they are not technically always retail accessible.
Okay, so unless you're plugged in, you're paying full price, or worse, buying the wrong thing.
Well, that's true. Provenance is everything, right? A Picasso with a certified chain of title and exhibition history, that's a blue chip. A Picasso from a third party side, something that discovered in the back of some storage closet in Europe, potentially worthless. I mean, you get a lot of forgeries and items of disrepute in this market. So it's important that when clients are buying these things, they're also buying these pieces from the right people and you're buying the relationships too.
It's a relationship business.
Exactly. We have a lot of in-house advisors and external curators we work with, right? And these people have spent years building dealer trust. The ultra wealthy don't shop; they are invited to acquire.
Alban, let's close this where it started with meaning. What role do passion assets do actually play in the intergenerational legacy?
Huge. Those assets are often most emotionally powerful elements of a family's estate. Trust me, during estate planning, those conversations are sometimes the most spirited. So we have clients who loan paintings to museum under family foundations, create art advisory committees with the children to teach stewardship, build digital archives of memorabilia to be passed on like a narrative heirloom. Recently, we were talking to this Middle Eastern family, and our advice is build a private gallery, right? Open it to scholars, invite collectors. So it doesn't. It's not a vault. It's a legacy statement. Structure that under a Jersey trust with a foundation layer for cultural philanthropy, and it's golden.
That's beautiful, not just for wealth's sake, but also identity, continuity, and story.
Exactly. Assets let families make a statement, right? This is who we are. This is what we value. If you structure right, what you love becomes what you leave behind, and not in a vault, but as a living memory.
Alban, what's your final advice for someone who has or is building a passion asset collection?
Structure it like it matters because it does. Too often people spend, say, $10 million on art, but leave it uninsured or untitled or stuck in some jurisdiction with some bad probate law. A rotoko in the wrong country can cost you hairs millions. Passion assets are emotional and they're financial instruments too. So if you love them, protect them and make sure you pass them on the right way, right? You want them to last, you want to structure them the right way.
So, whether it's a watch, a car, or a piece of art, it deserves the same level of thought as a portfolio allocation.
Absolutely, because the true ROI of a passion asset isn't it just in its appreciation, right? It's in its longevity, in its legacy, in its liquidity when it counts.
Behind every passion asset is a story, a memory, a moment, or a message worth passing on. Whether it's a painting, a car, or a collection built over decades, these aren't just objects, they are a reflection of who we are and what we value. If this conversation made you think twice about the art on your wall, the car in your garage, or the watches in your safe, ask yourself, are they protected? Are they performing? Are they even future proofed? At Gallant Toole, we help our clients hold passion assets with elegance, legality, and purpose. Visit galto.com or connect with your advisor to explore how we structure emotion into legacy. Thanks for being with us today. Until next time, I'm Sarah, and we'll see you in the next episode of Wealth and Mobility Insights by Gallant Toole.